you like my shirt?
Hey there, Patreons. Oh, he presupposed me. I do like your shirt. We're back for the Facts of Geek Life. I am the titular Charlie Carden, coming at you with my exuberant recording partner, Mr. Jonathan Snedeker, with his Scooby Doo shirt. Scooby Doo, what's up?
Where are you, Charlie? I'm kidding. How are you?
I'm right here.
There
I'm
you are.
good.
Yes,
I'm good. We are recording this. We record quite far in advance, but it's currently the holiday season, so we're all excited and having fun. And we're here to talk about Scooby Doo. We have jumped almost 10 years forward from the previous Scooby Doo conversation because that series aired. The first series was in 1969, if I'm not mistaken.
that's correct.
And we are now in the year of my birth, 1976,
Yes, we are.
with the Scooby Doo and Dynamite Hour. Now, we actually are only talking about the Scooby Doo portion of that because the Dynamite portion seems to be lost to the histories of time. It was not on Tubi, which is our resource, by the way, if you're listening to this and want to go check it out for yourself. Tubi is a free streamer with ads because, something's got to pay the bills, that you can go and check out. But you can find all about the Scooby Doo show from 1976, which was on Saturday mornings on ABC.
It was.
And as we mentioned, first new installments since 1973. What was in 73? Is that how long the year is? Was the original show go
They
for that long?
they did no. They did a Scooby Doo movies, and they
Right.
had celebrities in them, like the Globetrotters, and
Batman and Robin.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
which we
good
haven't
stuff.
covered, so we'll save that.
We will save that for another time. But yeah, we're jumping in. We're going to talk about four different installments of the 30-minute new adventures of Scooby Doo here. So let's get it rolling. But before we do that, Jonathan, a little perspective. You mentioned to me in the pre-roll that you were in 1976. You were in high school, not yet in high school, young enough to appreciate Scooby Doo.
Actually, I was a freshman in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and they kicked off the show in the new season, and I was just moving into Grand Rapids at that
Look at
time. And
that,
we,
our beloved Grand Rapids.
yes, and my brothers and I did watch the show, and we were excited to see Scooby Doo back in a series. We had watched reruns of the others, so some new fresh episodes were very welcome. And it was the Scooby Doo Dynamite Hour, and so the shows are a little longer for Scooby Doo. They're 25 minutes instead of 20. And we were excited for them, and we even watched the Dynamite.
Not that's JJ Walker. We'll cover that in a different
Yeah,
segment
that's a
when we tackle good times.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, we did watch these shows and look forward to them on Saturday mornings. I
Yeah,
was still very much into cartoons even in high
yeah.
school. Yeah.
Good deal. All right. Well, let's jump on in. And I love this first segment because it created a villain so iconic that he was in the opening titles. And it has there's a bit in this first episode that is one of the most memorable for me because appearing in those opening titles. But episode 4 of the 16 episode season, I believe,
Yeah.
is Watt, WATT, a shocking ghost from October 2nd of 1976. An empty gas tank forces the gang to stop the night in Winter Haven. However, the town's spookiest resident, I figure Winter Haven must be near Buffalo because of all that snow. The town's spookiest resident, a 10,000-volt ghost, plans to ensure that no one stays for very long. Is the ghost a spirit of a vengeful electrical worker, or are there more mundane monsters at work? I don't know, Jonathan. What do you think?
Well, they have a habit of having they either get lost or they run out of gas or something happens where they're and I never know where these kids are traveling to. They sort
Or
of
from?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. It's timeless. But yeah, they pull into Winter Haven and they find it deserted,
Mhm.
and they're not sure.
Temporarily.
Yeah, they're not sure what's going on there. And as the mystery evolves, they learn that people are being scared away
Mhm. Oh, that's always
from
the way
Winter
it
Haven,
goes.
and it's this 10,000-volt ghost, which is actually one of the more popular characters for the scary ghosts, just because he's quite a bit different, and we find out why later on in the episode. But climbing power lines and grabbing onto power lines and doing some things that you don't normally see. One thing that sort of jumps right out at you too is our characters are dressed for the winter. So they're wearing
Th-
earmuffs and
three
scarves and
three of them are. Velma is still wearing a skirt, while she is the one who specifically says that it is 20 below zero,
yeah, but she's wearing that
and the heater is dead in the van.
she's wearing that long scarf and that warm hat. So she's trying, but
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah,
get some pants.
she's
Come
still
on,
in a mini skirt. But Daphne is definitely dressed for the weather. She's wearing a longer coat and dress and
she's got that Russian hat.
leggings and boots
Yeah,
and yeah, and that
yeah.
Russian hat. Yeah, yeah, and even Freddie's in on the act too. So,
Yeah.
but this episode it starts off where they are wondering where everybody is, and then it evolves into trying to figure out why there's this big scary electric ghost and they have some assistant. The town mayor is really helpful. He like greets them and offers them a place to stay, and so they settle in, and then all of a sudden things start to go a little weird, as they always do in the Scooby Doo episodes.
Right. Right, right. So they're in there, and I do love it. We get the flashback story, the kind of the Scooby Doo ending where it's like water flowing through the street and goes "Boo, loo, loo, loo." And the town is abandoned because at some point in the recent past, there was a storm that was going to knock out for all the electricity goes to one tower in the middle of town,
Yes.
and that one tower, if the line snap, the town um is out of juice. So I do love that the guy who the electric worker who has to go climb the tower,
Yeah,
isn't his name
Voltner.
Voltner? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, not a setup there. And what the story is being retold by is by the mayor, right? Is being retold
Hmm.
is that the that caused Voltner to become the ghost. It's a similar, and there's other similarities to a couple of different Marvel villains in this, because Electro is the Spider-Man villain who shoots electricity. So that's one of them, and that comes. I have a reference to that later in my notes. But the electrical like monster that's just electricity is actually a villain in the Hulk called
Hmm.
Zax, ZZZAX,
Ah,
and was portrayed by Nick Nolte in the 2003 Hulk film with Eric Bana. So some Marvel ties back to this, and those were
cool.
both characters that were around at the time. But yes, Voltner is the guy, and the ghost appears anytime there's a guy from the power company in the at the power plant. He says, "Oh, anytime I repair one of these, the ghost shows up and zaps it."
Right.
Yeah,
Tur-
so yes,
Turbines or whatever. Yeah.
yeah. So they're trying to get that sorted, but what they discovered, I'm trying to remember why they go back into town. They end up at the pet shop,
Yeah, so
and yeah,
they find some clues. They find these bird seeds,
right, exactly. So that's what
and
leads them to the pet shop, right?
so they're like, "Well, what? Here's a clue. There's bird seeds out. And we're in the middle of winter. What? And of course, there's always, Shaggy or Scooby gets to say something funny, and it's like, yeah, these clues are for the birds. That's what sort of
Wow.
you gotta. Yeah, there's always I gotta be a pun in there, but anyway,
Right.
so they go into town and they go into the pet shop and they find this
Pet Shop
parrot,
Boys.
and this parrot is a really good clue for them, because they find more bird seeds in the pet shop, and I guess they were sticking to the feet of the. We find this out later, um,
Yeah.
but this parrot is very helpful. Gives them three clues that pretty much help solve the mystery. The first thing that the bird says is rubber suit,
Right.
and then it says tunnel, and then it says closet. And once Velma has those three clues, she figures out that if you go to the closet, there is a rubber suit in there, and behind the rubber suit is a tunnel
That goes
under
where does it?
Winter Haven. Yes, and it
Uh-huh.
comes out, I think, by the power plant, if I remember right.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
So,
that all seems pretty fishy. The rubber suit, I did note, um, is I thought of Electro, the Spider-Man villain. There was an issue of
hmm.
the Spectacular Spider-Man in the early 80s. I had a copy of it, issue 66, where Spider-Man took basically a rubber diver suit,
Mhm.
and he still managed to match it to the red and blue colors, but he used that to defeat Electro so he could get close
Mhm.
enough to grab him. So that made me.
Hey, Secret Friends Unite, let me tell you about Zencaster. We use them for our show, and now they're supporting us. Zencaster is now the all in one solution making podcasting easy. It's the ultimate web based podcasting solution, provides high quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio quality content all from one dashboard. Being a creator has never been easier. And we chose Zencaster because of the ease of use, high quality output, and it makes it super easy for our guests to come on. We had multiple solutions we tried before, and Zencaster has just been the best fit for us. Why Zencaster? It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sounds and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of Zen knowing Zencaster's multi layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. Have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencaster's post production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So, if you're interested in making an easy, high quality podcast just with the click of a browser button, go to zencaster.com/pricing and use my code SFU1. You'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Now back to the show.
So of course we're going to have Freddy come up with one of his ingenious traps, and what comes out of that trap is, since he's a 10,000 volt ghost, they're going to drop a coil around him and turn him into an electromagnet. And,
Nice.
and then the whole idea is that Shaggy and Scooby will have this toboggan with this rather large anvil, which anvils always, are in cartoons and they always serve some sort of purpose. But he's drawn to the anvil, and so they're tobogganing down this hill, and the ghost is rolling up into a giant snowball because
Of
he's
course.
he's trapped inside the coil, and this is how they catch him. He rolls down the hill, and then actually he runs over, of course, Scooby and Shaggy and the toboggan, so they all get mixed up in the snowball. And then when they get to the bottom of the hill, of course, they hit something, and Shaggy and Scooby fall out completely unharmed. And then of course you have your ghost who's suddenly captured, and now we're going to have the big reveal, which we always have at the end of a Scooby show. Yeah, so very exciting stuff here in this one too. I like the way they caught him because
Yeah,
that's somewhat unconventional, yet it still worked out in the end.
absolutely. And
And
so
they have,
who was the culprit? Who was the culprit?
well, it was a guy in a scuba suit, right? Who was able to charge himself up because he was wrapped in rubber. It was Voltner.
Voltner, my goodness.
I know. And then on top of it, the mayor was in on it.
Right. It was a land swindle.
Yes, it
Yeah.
was. It was a real estate. They were driving people out so they could buy up their homes cheap.
Right. Because the freeway was coming through. It was kind of like
Yes,
a
and they're gonna
yeah,
make a fortune. And they explain the whole thing at the end. I don't know how they figure it out when they do, but they're so smart, these teens, that
I know.
eventually they got it all. There was a couple of notable things in this one too. The winter clothing, but when they're interrogating the parrot, Scooby switches to a trench coat, which is so. Um, just there's certain things they do as a way of creating the atmosphere,
Right.
and this one, for this series, and I'll bring it up now because we're going to talk about some other episodes, but the artwork caught my attention immediately. The drawing, they don't reuse a lot of the cells. It's a lot of fresh art. It's probably the best drawn Scooby Doo to date, as far as what they were able to do with the characters. And I'm like, why does these episodes look so good? the art is incredible. I mean, I
Yeah.
talk about the fashions, and what they're wearing,
Right.
but if you look at these episodes, there's a lot of reaction on the part of the characters, like
Yeah.
facial expressions, and a lot. There's a ton more scenes, and they upped the amount of people working on the project to well over 100 people.
Wow. So they really stepped up their game.
Well,
That's
then,
awesome.
but
Yeah.
wait, and so Bill Singer is the production designer for this, and he was not the lead, but he was part of the original Scooby Doo. Where are you?
Hmm.
So Hanna Barbera really upped their game with this Scooby Doo show. They put a lot more resources into it, a lot more people into it, and I was like, why would they? It's a good franchise. They must have realized they had something. But then I looked and I went through the other people that worked on it. There were three production managers, and lo and behold, I found Jane Barbera,
Wow. Okay.
Joseph's daughter. This was like her first really big project.
Wow.
And I believe that Jane Barbera had a lot to do with why these Scooby Doo episodes look as good as they do. I
Gotcha.
think she was trying to show her dad that I can do this, dad. And she had a long career. She's still living. Had a
Yeah.
long career doing. She started in like ink and and she had this like ink and print, I think they call it. There's a name for it. And then she graduated into design, and then she did all this production, and she did a ton of Scooby Doo, a ton
Yeah.
of it,
Wow.
into the future. And I think she's in her late 70s, early 80s. She's still occasionally is part of a project, but
Wow. My
I think
goodness.
this is when she stepped up and made a statement.
That is
Another thing
awesome.
too is because she's involved in this whole project. This Jane Barbera,
Yeah.
he had Joseph Barbera had two daughters, and this is one of the two, and she's got her hands all over this thing, and it looks great. I mean,
Yeah.
it's well drawn. Um, the other thing too is we have a new Velma. Patricia Stevens
Oh, okay.
has come into the voice characterizations, and she had a good run. She's known for being on MASH and some other things, but
Okay.
yeah, but she's another person that joined up on this particular set of episodes and does a great job as Velma. Not I'm trying to remember who the girl was before, and she did stick around and do some more Velmas, but this is Patricia Stevens' first go around with doing
Gotcha.
Velma's voice.
Excellent. Boy, talk about a job for life. Well, yeah, I mean, voice work is, I'm sure, like, as far as your body can carry you. So,
Yeah.
my favorite bit was the filing cabinet deal, because
Ah,
that shows up in that is immediately transitioned to the opening credits. And for me, when I was watching the opening credits, was they had a great new bouncy new song, which
yes.
the original run in the late '60s was really great for the Scooby Doo, Where Are You? The whole one. But that is memorable to me, even though like I said, I was only a few months old when this came on, so I obviously saw this in reruns in the early '80s, very, very, very late '70s.
Mhm.
But that filing cabinet bit where they're opening and closing the filing cabinets, kind of like in the original series where they were run back and forth and it was all the doors, and then the one long filing cabinet that goes underneath the Watt monster and they pop out, that I just happen to remember that. So I think that's funny, that's
I I,
memorable.
I agree because that new theme song. When you think about Scooby Doo, that first one with Scooby Doo, Where Are You? And that song, I mean, they used that. That was used, I think, in the future one as well. But this is a good theme. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really well written. It's great music. They did reuse a lot of the old tracks from the original Scooby Doo, which
Yeah.
gave it the original flavor
Yeah.
in the scenes. But the music, yeah, especially the theme song, you're right. I mean, it's really good theme song, and
Yeah.
the lyrics are quite good.
Mhm.
Yes, they are.
Groovy. Very groovy, getting in the '70s. All right. Next we roll over to the Headless Horseman of Halloween. This was a pre-Halloween episode from October 9th of '76. On Halloween, the gang takes Scooby Dum, first appearance, I'm guessing, or at least it seems like a first appearance.
Yeah, he didn't have too many, but yeah.
Yeah, with them to the Halloween party. When the electricity goes out, one of the guests goes missing, and the gang must chase down the legendary Headless Horseman to solve the mystery. Yeah, so I was wondering if I might, before I toss it over to you, if this was Scooby Dum's first appearance. I was, at first, I thought he kind of reminded me of like Snoopy's cousin, Needles. But then the more he talked, he reminds me more of Cletus, the slack-jawed yokel from The Simpsons, because he's just, and he lives up to his name. He's got a kind of a country accent, and says like, uh-oh, spaghettios, like he's got dumb catchphrases like dun dun dun. So he's like the cousin Oliver, which is, again, maybe
Uh-huh.
that's why he doesn't show up too much. So anyway, that's my Scooby Dumb observations. Over to you.
So, well, first off, we're at Crane Manor, so they're trying to capture that original story they about Crane,
Right.
with the headless horseman, and of course here we are at a Halloween party, and Shaggy is dressed up as Dracula, right? And he's having fun with that, particularly with the way he's talking. And then you're right, Scooby Doo comes up as a horse, and then you're wondering who's the other half of the
Who's the
horse.
horse's ass?
And then who pops out of the back end of the horse is Scooby Dum. It's kind of a weird. They didn't know what to do with the character at first because they introduced him as his Scooby's brother,
Right. I
and
think changed to cousin later in the
it
episode.
changed. It only was brother in one episode, and then
Yeah.
it became cousin from then on out. And I never thought of him as brother, so I either missed this. I don't remember missing this episode. I just never picked up on it
Yeah.
because I always thought of him as a cousin.
Right.
And when Scooby Doo was introduced, I had this next door neighbor, and he was probably 4 years younger than me. He absolutely loved that character. He would quote him, and he would talk like him,
Fan
and
favorite, I guess.
yeah, exactly. And I was sort of like on the fence, like it's nice that Scooby has a cousin, but I'm not totally. I wasn't like I liked Scooby,
Yeah.
and it's like I wasn't sure what to do with that character. Well, they weren't either because they only had him, I think, maybe in 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we meet Scooby Dum, and then we have Fred, who's dressed up as a pirate, and then we have Velma, who is a witch, right, with a big hat, and then we
Mhm.
have Daphne, who's dressed up as a purple fairy. So we- we've got all the Halloween characters there. Um, we meet Beth Crane, who sounds a lot like and is the voice of Judy Jetson.
No. Yeah, it's nice that they have a friend who's from outside the friend group, but again, the way she tells the story, because obviously Sleepy Hollow is a town upriver in the Hudson Valley in New York State. So this kind of places them as being from New England, where it felt like back in the 69 series, it felt like they lived out west.
California.
So it's kind of weird. So I
Yeah,
couldn't
because
really place that.
they had like a surf mobile. I mean that
Yeah,
those big vans were used to cart around surfboards. So
right.
yeah, it definitely had a vibe. But yeah, have them driving around New England in because they talk in one of these other episodes we're going to talk about being near the Canadian border. So
Right.
yeah.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, so that kind of pins them as to living in, upstate New York and
hmm
putzing about. So that
So
that makes a lot more
so
sense.
anyway, Beth Crane is voiced by Janet Waldo,
Hmm.
and Janet Waldo is the voice of Judy Jetson.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I
All
know. So
right.
she sounds very familiar. She did do other episodes for Scooby Doo. This wasn't her only one. And we had a couple other people in there there's another show that Scooby Doo did later. It was called The 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo, and there's 13 episodes. And
13 ghosts.
Joan Gerber and Bob Holt are in this episode as voice actors, and they also did all 13 of the Scooby Doo, the Ghosts of Scooby Doo.
Oh my.
Yes, later on in their career. So, uh, but Dawes Butler is doing the voice of Scooby Dum,
Hmm.
and he's regularly known for doing voice characterizations. He's sort of like a Mel Blanc, only he's the Hanna-Barbera version of it. And
Gotcha.
then you also had Don Messink in there
Right.
doing Messick, I guess is how you say
Messick.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he was doing Scooby Doo. All
yeah.
right.
Hmm.
So we have the usuals, but Dawes Butler I think trying to bring the Scooby Doo character to life, um, he might have overdone it a little.
Maybe, maybe. Well, like I
I
said, it
don't
was a
know.
hit with the kid in your neighborhood, I guess.
Yeah, it was kind of a poke at Southern culture in some ways
Yeah,
too. So,
yeah.
but one thing about the headless horseman is his big phrase is, "I want a head." He
Which
says
if
it.
you which you can be glad they left the A out of that sentence.
Ah!
Oh, that would have been very inappropriate for the young crowd. Yeah, because I think about my association with the Headless Horseman. So obviously there was a Disney short in the 60s, but I think of the Tim Burton movie from the 90s because I love that movie where the Headless Horseman was Christopher Walken. And he didn't talk, he just when he got his head back, he just growled. But yeah, the headless horseman didn't talk and he didn't have a pumpkin for a head. He was just had no head and he chopped people's heads off. It was very visceral. Where in this one, he's looking for a head and he eventually gets, is it cousin, what was it? The
Elwood.
cousin Elwood, not the Blues Brothers, gets chased down and crashes his car, and then all of a sudden he has Elwood's head.
Yeah,
Well, that's not much of a. I love the conclusion of this because they finally chase him down. They figure out that he's going to get on a biplane at the local airport
yes.
and fly away. And I did love this hangar scene where
Uh-huh.
they were futzing about in the plane because they had a plan to trap him under a parachute tarp.
Right.
Instead, it doesn't work out. So the plane within the hangar is going back and forth in front of
Yeah,
the camera,
yeah.
and which is it's not. Yeah, that's not really how that works. And I did notice when they finally got him into the air. Um, Scooby does the thing where he's on the wing where he walks out and he's floating in the air. So he's some kind of Scooby Jesus. I wrote.
Yeah, yeah,
Nope.
he totally.
Yeah, how did he? I don't know how he pulled that
He
one.
runs back.
Right. He runs, yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
there's no gravity.
yeah, yeah.
He has some kind of necromancer powers that he's able to
Uh,
pull this off.
Meanwhile, on the ground, Scooby Dum's running around with a fishing net, so it's
Right,
trying
'cause
to
he's gonna
catch
catch
him in a
him.
big net. Yeah,
Oh my gosh. It
yeah,
is. It's just an absolute comedy of errors.
yeah,
We have a red herring in the form of the manservant Tarloff that they're
yeah.
just really teeing it up because he wears a cloak that has a
Uh,
similar high collar that could be
uh-huh.
always headless exactly. But yeah,
Yeah.
in the end of it, it was cousin Elwood who was looking to steal a family heirloom
Yes, the
because
diamond
yes, because his
company
international shoe factory
went under.
went
Yeah,
under, and so he was looking to steal it and flee the country, but the gang
yeah,
caught him. Yeah, so
they
yeah,
did.
family troubles.
Yeah, and it ended with a little. It wasn't the meddling kids. It was, if you kids hadn't crossed me up.
Crossed me up. Think you crossed yourself. Well, yeah, because
Yeah.
when he crashed the car and abandoned it, he took the keys with him, and that's how the kids figured out that
Uh,
oh, he just pulled a switcheroo on us. So,
yeah.
but it's
They
pretty
try to
cool. Yeah,
they try to pull his mask off, and he's like, "Quit pulling on my face."
exactly. That's just my face.
Yeah,
But
it was.
he wore white makeup and like his eyes looked
Yeah.
crazy. I thought the horse looked like it was on drugs because its eyes were like bright
Nah.
yellow. It's like what are you feeding that horse? Feeding it beefarino with crack? I don't know.
No,
This is bad. This is bad news.
I was thinking more like jalapenos.
Oh my gosh. He seemed very upset. But yeah, I thought this was cute. I love the headless horseman story, but
It
it's
had
funny
a
that
classic
yeah,
tale to it.
yeah.
Yeah. So cousin Elwood,
Cousin Elwood,
no
my
relation to
h-
Jake and
how
Elwood.
how upset Jake would be
Yeah.
is that they're too far from Chicago. So all right, well let's keep it rolling with episode 7. Boy, this is a mouthful. The Harem Scarum Sanitarium
Yes.
from October 23rd of 76. The gang is on a trip to Niagara Falls, but they're on the Canadian side of the border. The gang ends up staying in an asylum, haunting by the ghost of Dr. Coffin. Would you really stick around anywhere? His two henchmen seem to be driving an ambulance taking patients, but are they really patients or is the spooky sanitarium hiding something? Um, Man, I think Fred doesn't own a map. Because do you notice that he's like, well, we've been driving and trying to catch the border spot, and then they come up on a guy he's a Mountie or whatever, he's a border
Yeah.
officer, and
Yeah.
he says, drive down the road and take the fork at this road or
Don't
whatever.
take the right fork.
Yeah,
Take
take
the
the left
left.
fork.
Yeah.
And they come up on the sign is blown over by the wind, so they of course go the
They
wrong
get
way.
struck by lightning.
Yeah, and then in the next scene, you
Yeah.
hear Velma go, "We've been driving for an hour." I'm like, how close to the border were they if they're still driving an hour unless they're just driving away. But yeah, it's just but they also have that nonstop sideways
uh,
rain, but it's also still kind of light outside.
yeah.
So it's a little confusing. So anyway, please, by all
So
means.
so anyway, so in the opening, you're right. So it's they you have Velma talking to Freddy going, "Are you sure this is the road to the US border?" And I'm wondering, where are they going? Are they trying to go to Canada? What's going on here? And then they run into Officer Oldfield.
Oldfield, yes.
Yes, and he's a Canadian policeman, and they end up telling him that they're lost, and he makes this big deal about, well, you're going to go down the road here to Foster Road, and when you get there, don't take the right fork, because if you take the right fork, there's been a lot of creepy freaky things up on the right fork, and it's
What?
the ghost of Dr. Coffin is up there, and he basically lays it all out, right?
Yeah.
Well, then of course the lightning strikes the sign in the weather, and it spins it, and of course it's pointing Foster Road. And so they come upon the sign, and oh, here's Foster Road, which is going on the right fork. And so off they go, and they drive to the sanitarium, and they pull up to the sanitarium, and they get attacked by these two dogs. And Shaggy and Scooby run up a tree, and the two dogs are trying to get them, and they're vicious. And then all of a sudden, there's this music that's been playing. It stops, and
Dun, dun, dun.
the dogs stop, and they just sort of walk away. So they go, that was weird. They just stopped trying to attack us and just became very tame and walked away. So they go up to the door where the dogs went, and they knock on the door, and out comes Dr. Tewksbury. And he's just a little weird and comical guy, and he's like,
Mhm.
what are you boys doing here? I'm Dr. Tewksbury. And so 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 they introduce themselves, and they see the dogs in the crate. The dogs are in a cage, and he says, "Yeah, those dogs attacked us." He goes, "Well," he says, "I thought I heard something." But then he tells them that the dogs were something that Dr. Coffin was experimenting on with brain waves, and he was using the
Jeez.
organ to create the brain waves using music to create and control the dogs. Well, we're
Sounds
gonna
totally legit.
yeah. So anyway, so the dogs and the organ go together, and then when they're talking about the dogs, I like this part. He goes, "Oh, that's Cuddles and Snookums," and 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 Scooby goes, "Cuddles, Snookums," and it's like it's like what? And so anyway, so they they start to see things like the ambulance pulling up and people going in, and they see up in the window, they see the mad Dr. Coffin, who has a very highly
He's
crazed
stylized, looks like a
crazed
goblin. Yeah.
laughter, yeah,
Yeah.
and he glows on top of it. So they start to investigate, right? One of the things though that keeps reoccurring, and this is something we're starting to notice more and more with Shaggy, is he's using the word zoinks a lot.
Right. He's working on a catchphrase.
Yes, and zoinks is become like his word, and he uses it a lot in this particular episode. So be prepared for a lot of zoinks.
There's much to zoink at.
So they suspect Dr. Tewksbury, but they start to investigate, and they find that they find it's like there's a tunnel, and there's like
Batcave, yeah.
yeah, and so they go down there, and they see the bodies on the gurneys, and they assume that they're people that have passed away, and then they figure out that, oh my gosh, there's like gold bars under here and
With a
wigs, and
wig, because they had
what's
found a pile
going
of
on, right?
wigs back at the sanitarium, and what they thought was a morgue, like you said, and then when they pull the sheet back, it's literal gold bars. So
Yeah,
it's it's fishy
yes.
because yeah, as it turns out, our suspect, the real Dr. Coffin, is really the Mountie, the officer Oldfield, who is running a smuggling ring, stolen gold from Montreal, put into bread wrappers down in this assembly line that they have down in the Bat Cave, and
Hmm.
they used a solar furnace back at the sanitarium to melt the gold into bars. It's very elaborate
It is.
setup. And then they were planning to ship it across the border and have their bucks. So yeah,
And they
pretty
discovered that solar
I
furnace
wrote
purely
it's
by
Scooby,
accident.
Shaggy, and a pile of wigs, title of your sex tape, which if you
Yeah.
watch
So,
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you get that
well,
one.
even the moonbeams hitting that thing are kind of
But
hard on it.
yeah, this one was a little more ingenious in my opinion. So this was good. I liked a little bit more elaborate plot. I thought this was pretty good. Final thoughts?
Well, I like the dancing dogs, and one of the things when he was playing the organ, Dr. Coffin, and the dogs were dancing, which I found very interesting. Scooby was asleep, and he wakes up, and then he starts dancing with the dogs. So I guess it doesn't matter what kind of dog, um, they're susceptible to this brainwave organ. I'm not I'm not 100% sure why that was important. I think it was just to make things spooky or to control the dogs to keep people away. I think
Yeah.
that's, but yeah, like you were just saying that it's pretty elaborate what was going on there, like how they were smuggling things out in bread bags
Right.
and one
Big criminal
yeah,
enterprise.
and when they do the big reveal, they pull the mask off, right, Doctor Coffin, and they go, and this must be Doctor Tewksbury, and
Right.
then it's
They
not. It's
didn't have it
actually
figured out.
Officer Oldfield, and they're all
Right.
surprised. They didn't quite have it right, which I found to be pretty good. There was no that I saw final statement about the meddling kids or any of that.
Gotcha. Yeah.
No, the police officer who was there, he was saying that, oh, you've caught this robber and he's an organized criminal, and he's posing as um, a police officer, but he's not really. Oldfield is not a police officer. He's really this robber who stole all this gold and is trying to get it out of the country. Um, Final thoughts. I liked the rail car chase.
Yeah.
That's a common thing that's
Yeah.
done,
Yeah.
and it's always fun to see that. I thought the solar furnace was creative. I'm not sure
Yeah.
how it works, but it's amazing what they can do with a few big refracting light
The moonlight
mirrors.
burned Scooby's butt.
I
Burned his
know.
butthole. Ouch.
And then at the end, to sort of wrap it up, because they always try to end with a laugh,
Right.
um, they have Scooby dancing with Daphne and getting down, and then all of a sudden something spooks Scooby, and he goes running off down the road, and they're all laughing at him because he's scared.
Right. Don't the other dancing dogs come out at that point? I was trying to
Was
remember.
that what spooked him?
I think it was. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So, well, cool. Good deal.
Cuddles and
Cuddles and Schnucko.
Snookums. Yeah.
Schnookums. Oh my goodness.
What?
What? Well, this has been action packed, and we're actually going to do a part 2 of this first season. We're going to grab another 3 episodes for our next segment. But this has been fun. Again, you can see this on Tubi. And Jonathan, I know that you are somewhat recalcitrant in your social media, but people, where can people find you out there?
The easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. I tend to gravitate more there than anywhere else. I do a little on Facebook, but not much.
Gotcha. Well, Facebook can be a scary place these days.
It sure
That's
can.
fine.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you, our wonderful Patreons, for tuning in. If you happen to be listening to this in the distant future on our free feed, you can visit patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite. Try us out for free for 7 days, and then you stay on board for as little as $2 a month. And as always, Jonathan, you'll appreciate this. As they said in the Blues Brothers, that's a lot of entertainment for $2.
It is.
And with that, I will bid you adieu. Scooby Dooby Doo.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.